This is the Jerry Callahan Show.
All right, I guess we have to start by giving credit to the insurrectionists, the mutineers who overthrew Joe Biden a month ago, who decided he was just not fit for office, that he was unhinged, that he was angry, that he was old, that he had dementia. And they went in and they said, Joe, not your time. Time for you to leave the stage. We need to get younger. You can't win. You are done here. Your time is up. They have a point, and their point was driven home last night and this morning, by the way. If you missed it, and I assume many people did, because Joe Biden, the sitting president of the United States, took the stage at 11:29 p.m. Eastern time. He had to wait backstage. There's a man who we were told cannot function after 4 p.m. There's a man who, by all accounts, is tucked away in bed by 8 p.m. They made him stand there backstage and wait as Raphael Warnock spoke, and Jasmine Crockett, and all the young guns in the Democrat Party got out there and made their speeches and talked about race and talked about January 6th and lied about Trump. And then they had Jill Biden take the stage. Yes, Jill Biden. And she said Joe Biden dug deep within his soul and decided it was no longer his time. And he decided to not run for a second term, which is obviously a lie. He did not decide. He didn't jump. He was pushed. We all know that. And then Ashley Biden took the stage. You know how late it was when the Bidens got to speak on day one of the convention? It was about the same time Ashley Biden used to shower. As we know from her diary, she waited till late at night because she didn't want anybody joining her in the shower. And she spoke and she introduced her father, and her father shuffled on stage and spoke for 48 minutes on Monday night at midnight. This was complete and total humiliation of the sitting president, of the only guy we know who's beaten Donald Trump, of a raving narcissist who no doubt thinks he could still beat Donald Trump, but they were having none of it. And I want everyone to keep something in mind when they watch these speeches, when they see Kamala Harris laughing and smiling and saying, "We love you, Joe." They could not have removed Joe Biden from office or from the race without Kamala Harris. The only real threat they had, the only sure thing they had, was the 25th Amendment, which is invoked by the vice president. If Kamala Harris didn't want to depose Joe Biden, he would not have been deposed. They, obviously, all the party leaders, Nancy Pelosi, Hakeem Jeffries, Chuck Schumer, Barack Obama, obviously they're the ones who forced Joe out, but they couldn't have done it without Kamala Harris, the phoniest, fakest, most contrived candidate we've ever seen. And there she was last night, smiling and laughing and cheering and hugging Joe Biden and saying, "We love you, Joe. We love you." He was an extraordinary president that she decided could no longer serve, that she decided was done and forced out and was replaced by a woman who got no votes, who won no primaries, who was a disaster when she ran on her own 4 years ago. But they finally let Joe speak. He was the last speaker on the first night. That is not a good slot. That is not a place you put somebody who you want to honor and celebrate. And once he took the stage, again, we had to admit, they have a point. He showed he showed the people who were still awake that he is indeed unfit, that he is indeed unhinged. It was an amazing thing to see. If you're into this stuff, if you're a news junkie, a political junkie, and you missed this and you had to go to bed and you had to go to work, go back, watch the whole speech. We're going to play some highlights, some lowlights, but he was screaming. It was Angry Joe from the old Philadelphia speech a couple of years ago, with the red background, the Mussolini speech. It was that all over again. But he was 2 years older, and obviously the dementia has taken its toll. He was losing his way. He was stumbling. He was lying. It was a remarkable thing to watch. I try to imagine, I just try to picture what it's like as they prepare him for his speech. Obviously, the mortician has to do his thing with the hair and the face and the teeth. They have to dress him. And then they write a speech for him, and I assume he takes a look at it. So you're telling me the people around Joe Biden, the people handling him, the people writing speeches for him said, here's an idea. Let's say Donald Trump called the Nazis in Charlottesville very fine people. Let's go with that. It is a lie, and everyone knows it's a lie, and it has been debunked over and over again. Even far left fact-checking sites like Snopes and PolitiFact, they have all said it's a lie. We've seen the video. We've heard Donald Trump say, I'm not talking about the Nazis. I'm not talking about the white supremacists. They should be condemned totally. We've seen it over and over and over again. So on Joe Biden's famous final scene, this is the last we're going to see of Joe Biden. This is the last real speech he will give as president. He got on a plane right after this and headed to California for vacation. Yes, another vacation for our sitting president. And they decided, let's go with that. Let's go with the story of Trump and Charlottesville and the very fine people. Let's run that thing up the flagpole one more time. Even the dumbest people in the audience, even AOC, they know, even Ed Markey, even the real diehard Democrat dummies know this is a lie. Everybody in the media knows it's a lie. Everybody in the country knows it's a lie. I'll ask again, if Trump's so bad, if he was such a bad president, if he's such a bad candidate, why do they have to lie? Why do you have to make stuff up? He doesn't give you enough material, enough things to criticize. You have to completely fabricate lies. I could not believe. Obviously, I could believe he was angry and unhinged and incoherent because he always is. But I couldn't believe they decided, let's run with that lie. And it wasn't the only one. I'm telling you, if you had a ticker, a counter, there were dozens of just blatant, flat out lies. And the crowd cheered, of course. And they all said, they chanted, "We love you, Joe." Yes, Nancy Pelosi was in the audience, and she had a sign that said, "We love Joe." That could be the phoniest thing we've seen in day one in this convention. But I shouldn't be surprised, but I am. I shouldn't put it past him, but I did. I said, he can't go there. He can't do the Charlottesville thing again. And he did. And it is just baffling. Who believes this? Nobody. Why do you include this? Your final speech of your 52-year career in politics, and you agree to once again read off the teleprompter a blatant lie. It was, I guess it was fitting. It was appropriate. This is a man who's built his career on lies. This is a man who repeats the same lies over and over again. And I guess he assumes the media will have his back because they usually do, and the Democrats will cheer and play along. But it must be odd to sit there and know you're lying to the world and know what you're saying has been debunked over and over again and do it anyway. I don't think we've ever seen anyone this dishonest, this brazenly disingenuous to just stand there and say these things over and over again. I made a quick list of lies, and we'll get to them. I mean, Charlottesville, suckers and losers, bloodbath, dictator on day one. Trump refuses to accept the results of an election. I'm pretty sure Trump left office, and you took office. I mean, it was one lie after another, and it was loud, and it was angry. I'm not sure Joe got the memo that this convention was supposed to be a celebration of joy. There was no joy in this 48-minute speech by this bitter, angry, unhinged old man. All right, let's get to it. I mean, let's do it one more time. We've done it, I don't know, Ironhead, in the last 3 years, I don't know, 20, 30 times. We've played the Charlottesville hoax. This one, by the way, had an added touch, and we'll get to that. It had just the height of irony in this one. But let's do it. Let's hear from Joe Biden one final time. Tell the most obvious lie, the most shameless lie he has ever told. Go ahead.
Carrying torches, their veins bulging from their necks, carrying Nazi swastikas, and chanting the same exact anti-Semitic bile that was heard in Germany in the early 30s. Neo-Nazis, white supremacists, the Ku Klux Klan, so emboldened by a president then in the White House that they saw as an ally. They didn't even bother to wear their hoods. Hate was on the march in America. Old ghosts in new garments.
He loses his way on the teleprompter. And then he says, Donald Trump called them very fine people. Yes, very fine people. Again, we've gone over this 100 freaking times. Here's the added twist this year, this time. At the same time, he was repeating this lie outside the convention, outside the United Center in Chicago, where tens of thousands of protesters, real anti-Semites, people that just hate Jews. They want to destroy Israel. The chant "River to the Sea," the chant "Death to Israel." Those people were outside the arena yesterday. They'll be outside the arena today. They are on the march. That is real hate on the march. And this was an amazing moment. Joe Biden went off script. They have a script that people had the copy of the speech. It's not in it. And we'll get to it, but just a quick sample of some of the people outside on the streets of Chicago. And they're out there in big numbers, and they're waving Hamas and Hezbollah flags. They have their keffiyehs on. They have their Palestinian flags. They have their signs, and they are chanting, and they hate Jews. Those people they've been obviously emboldened by this administration. Their numbers have built. They are a factor here. They are the reason Kamala Harris met in person with a radical imam in Dearborn, Michigan, met with the mayor of Dearborn. Speaking of radical Muslims. But this is a quick sample of the folks outside the arena in Chicago this week. Go ahead, play it.
You support Hamas?
Every Palestinian support Hamas, not just me. Every Palestinian support Hamas.
Do you support October 7th?
Who?
October 7th.
October 7? Yes, I do. What's wrong with October 7? You tell me.
Women and children.
What?
It's a murder.
What is this?
What's wrong with October 7th? He denies that they killed women and children. It says, what's wrong with October 7th? And it says, every Palestinian supports Hamas. There's one of your thousands of protesters outside the arena. And do we have Joe Biden going off script and praising these very fine people?
Those protesters out in the street, they have a point. A lot.
They have a point. So the protesters who say, what's wrong with October 7th, have a point. He said this in the same, 2-minute span that he said Trump praised Nazis, emboldened Nazis and white supremacists. And he said those protesters have a point. They have a friend in the White House right now in Joe Biden. That wasn't in the script. Joe Biden just threw that out there. And I apparently didn't see the irony. Just an amazing moment and a fitting final scene for a despicable president and a despicable man. We'll get to more of the the lies he told and the gaffes, which were pretty funny. And we'll give you a rundown on some of the other memorable moments from last night. AOC just went off the rails. She is such a dummy. It was uncomfortable to watch. I was disappointed, though. Joe Biden, they kept him waiting till 11:29 p.m. And I thought it was going to be even later because James Taylor was scheduled to perform before him. They bumped James Taylor for Joe Biden. Maybe JT will appear tonight, and we'll give you the latest on the debate schedule. Looks like Kamala is running scared. She's not going to debate on Fox. I will explain to you why she agreed to debate on ABC and not Fox. It's about what you expect, and we have the most vile, the most disgusting behavior by an airline passenger. Oftentimes you hear about these people losing their minds, getting drunk, and disrupting things on a plane. Well, we have the worst of the worst. And it's a former NFL player and a former Boston College football star. We'll tell you about that and more. But first,
Excuse me.
Be back in 1 second. Good.
I don't think we have time to go through all the crazy lies the president told last night on stage at Chicago, but we got a few, and we have a few highlights, a few moments where his brain just stopped working, as you'd expect. And you know what's funny is other speakers, not AOC, but lots of speakers are trying to project the joy and pretend they're, just happy warriors. Joe didn't get the memo. He didn't smile. He didn't laugh. He is so bitter, so angry. I don't blame him. I mean, he was forced out by his president and all his good friends in the Democrat Party. He was humiliated. He got the worst time slot of the week. I mean, Monday nights where you bury people, losers like Hillary Clinton, and to put him on at 11:30 when you know his bedtime is 8 p.m. That's pretty telling. That tells you all you need to know about how they feel about this man. And again, I guess I don't blame him. This guy, we know now, I think we could all agree, would be incapable of squaring off with Donald Trump. He certainly couldn't debate, and he couldn't campaign. He couldn't win, and they knew it, and they dumped him. And it looks like they made the right decision. They anointed his successor, and she's even in the polls with Trump. when this guy was getting crushed. But all right, let's get to some of his finest moments in his final speech to the country. 81-year-old Joe Biden. This was his farewell speech, and it went about as well as you'd expect. I gave you a quick rundown of the lies. He said, he went with the suckers and losers hoax, totally made up. He said Trump said the country would be a bloodbath, a lie. He said the auto industry would be a bloodbath if with Biden's EV mandates. He said he'd be a dictator on day one. It's not what he said. He said he'd be a dictator for a day, and he laughed because he said he was going to drill, baby, drill, and close the border on day one. Anybody against that? Anybody? And perhaps his biggest lie, he actually said there are fewer border crossings today than there were under Donald Trump. He said they've secured the border, which is just a flat out lie. But all right, what do you got here, Ironhead?
This is him talking about the border.
Oh, good. Just flat out lying to the country. Go ahead.
Then I had to take executive action. The result of the executive action I took, border encounters have dropped over 50%. In fact, there are fewer border crossings today than when Donald Trump left office.
And they cheer.
Not really. They couldn't even get behind that fully.
Even the crowd is like, did he really say that there were fewer border crossings than under Trump? I mean, you have to admit there are certain things that everybody understands. They understand that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris opened the border. The people in the room, they're all for it. They support it. They want the border open because they want more Democrat voters. This is the reaction from Bill Mnuchin, the border correspondent at Fox News. He says, he gives Biden credit. He says he's correct when he says illegal crossings have plummeted to Trump-era levels. However, his administration has released millions of illegal aliens into the U.S. ICE is completely overwhelmed, and there have been 1.9 million recorded gotaways under his leadership. And now there are almost daily headlines about violent crimes committed against Americans, often at the hands of someone who was caught and released at the border. Trump is pledging mass deportations, and we don't know what Harris's immigration positions are or what she has flip-flopped on, as she hasn't announced her policy. Yes, border crossings are down as they continue to fly tens of thousands of illegal aliens into your neighborhood with a plan, with a purpose to get them here and get them to vote. We know that. But hey, everything he said was a lie. But do we have his brain breaking as he's staring at the teleprompter?
Yeah, I think this is him trying to say they were eligible to vote, but he doesn't even come close.
Oh, is this the women thing? Women, the electoral power of women. Boy, does he struggle with this one. Go ahead.
In Roe v. Wade, as you heard earlier tonight, the United States Supreme Court majority wrote the following, quote, women are not without electoral or political power.
Women are not without electrical power. God, do they love abortion. This is a celebration of abortion. As we know, Planned Parenthood has a van, like an RV outside the convention hall offering free abortions and free vasectomies. And they were just, every speaker was just celebrating abortion. I'm old enough to remember when Democrats said they wanted abortion to be safe, legal, and rare. That's long gone. They want to just celebrate abortion in every way possible. And every speaker would just say, one speaker mentioned that Kamala Harris worked with troubled youths when she was a young lawyer, tried to help abused children, and there were no cheers. I believe it was Hillary Clinton. And then she said, she is a fighter for abortion, and the place went crazy. They didn't cheer when she said she helped abuse children, troubled children. No cheers. Abortion, huge applause. That's the theme. It's not joy. Well, I guess it is joy. Joy of over abortion in this country. It's really kind of sick. But what else we got from Joe? From Joe's.
Joe, that was all we pulled for Joe. We have AOC though.
Oh, good. We got AOC. She came on before. She got a better slot, a better time slot than the sitting president. And I love when AOC speaks because she's so dumb. It's just one cliche after another, and she screams and she thinks she's smart. I've made this point over the years about this, mostly with athletes, is when you hear, when people are sticking a microphone in your face every day for years, and they're writing down every word you say, every thought you have, you know what happens? Dumb people start thinking they're smart. They start to believe their thoughts are profound and insightful. I've named names before. Roger Clemens was a good one like that. Clemens thought he was smart. Sugar Ray Leonard might be the best example because everybody listened to every word, wrote down every word he said. He thought his words were really deep and profound. This might be the best example of all. AOC is beloved in the Democrat Party. She's a firebrand, and she thinks whatever she says is really effective and interesting and profound. And if she screams it, they think, wow, she's really something, man. She is really a brilliant speaker. She believes what people tell her, that she's got it all going on. And I watched this. It was short. It was only like 6 or 7 minutes. It was one cliche, one banality after another, but it was loud. I'll give her that. Watch.
And I, for one, am tired of hearing about how a 2-bit union buster thinks of himself as more of a patriot than the woman who fights every single day to lift working people out from under the boots that breathe, trampling on our way of life.
If there was like a comedy show like on Saturday night that mocked politicians, they would do her every week. I mean, if there was such a thing, they would mock this nitwit every week. She is just so vapid, and it was kind of funny. I mean, she's an actress.
Yeah,
she's not a politician. She's not a deep thinker. She's an actress. Someone writes a bunch of cliches, and she yells them out, and waves her arms, and say, "Oh yeah," and all the dummies in the audience go crazy and say, "Oh, she's a champion. She's a progressive champion of women and the underprivileged and the marginalized." Do we have more from the former bartender? She did go on a rant about how, she was a bartender and her family couldn't pay the bills, which is a lie. She grew up in the suburbs. She was middle class, not like Kamala Harris, who was upper class, son of a college professor and a Berkeley PhD. That's another lie that Kamala Harris she's came up, like all of us, came up in the working class, not like Trump. She wasn't a billionaire. No, she wasn't a billionaire, but she was a little rich kid who had all the privileges growing up as a child of 2 PhDs, including a Marxist college professor. But do we have any more from AOC?
This is her reading the teleprompter twice.
Oh, this is great. She loses her way and reads the same line twice. Go ahead.
Thank you, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, for your vision. Thank you. Thank you, Chicago, for your energy. Thank you, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, for your vision. And thank you, Joe Biden, for your leadership. 6 years ago, I was taking omelet orders as a waitress in New York City.
Oh God. she was the star of the night. They had the old guy, clean up at the end when half the people had already gone to sleep. They stuck the old guy at the end. But you know what? We got one more. Lola, it was just Chris Wallace's evaluation. Chris Wallace, who was a closeted liberal, little deep state stooge on Fox for years until he was outed by Tucker Carlson and others, and he went slinking away and ended up on CNN doing a show that nobody watches. He had a moment of clarity. He had a moment of honesty talking about the convention last night on CNN, and I'm not sure this is what you're supposed to say on CNN, Chris. Go ahead.
Well, the word that everybody is using to describe tonight is bittersweet. It's just bitter. The fact of the matter, I'm not saying Joe Biden is bitter, but, it's like you've been thrown out a window, and as you're falling, you go, gee, it's nice out here. No, he got thrown out of a window, and basically he was forced. There's going to be a lot of talk tonight about how generous it was of him and selfless of him. He was basically forced out by Nancy Pelosi and Barack Obama and Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries. And I suspect even the fact that there has been this surge of enthusiasm since he left and Kamala Harris took his place, that's got to be pretty tough, too. You got thrown out of a window and everybody's applauding the person who's now in the room.
You know what? If they were an honest media, they would get to the bottom of this. What happened in that meeting, just how bitter Biden is. And I assume there'll be a lot of talk about Biden stepping down before January, just saying he can't do the job and giving Kamala the advantage of being the president, a person who didn't receive a single vote. In the next couple months, may become the president, the first female president by proclamation. That will be interesting. And the media, I assume, will just continue to celebrate the joy and the happiness and the optimism and the excitement in this convention after they threw the old guy out a window, as Chris Wallace said. All right, my other favorite speaker of the day, Steve Kerr. What a slime ball he is. Steve Kerr is just such a snake. He's very vocal. He's got a lot of thoughts on politics and issues and policies, just not on all of them. Sometimes he just doesn't know enough. This is Steve Kerr speaking at the convention, and then we'll get to Steve Kerr when asked about communist China, his thoughts on communist China. And, he's just a basketball coach when he gets asked tough questions. When he's standing before all his fellow far-left liberals, man, he's not afraid to speak his mind. It's important, to take a stand in this country, just not about his paymasters in China. Go ahead.
I know very well that speaking out about politics these days comes with risks. I can see the shut up and whistle tweets being fired off as we speak. But I also knew as soon as I was asked that it was too important as an American citizen not to speak up in an election of this magnitude.
So it's too important not to speak up. As far as we know, there's over 1 million people in concentration camps, Uyghur Muslims in China. We know there are just endless human rights abuses in China. And of course, Steve Kerr, he doesn't have any thoughts on that. Those issues, that would be risky. That would be real risk. Standing before the DNC and ranting about gun control, that's not risky. I mean, he got cheered. He got honored, celebrated. Speaking out against China, like the former GM of the Houston Rockets did, that's risky. And this guy's such a weasel. He's not going to take that risk. Listen to him when he's asked about China.
Actually, I don't. I mean, it's a really bizarre international story, and a lot of us don't know what to make of it. So it's something I'm reading about, and just like everybody is, but I'm not going to comment further than that.
No, I don't. Any thoughts on China? No, I don't. I'm reading about it, but I'm just not going to comment, you coward. He is such a disgrace. I'm telling you. I was
Yeah,
rooting for France.
I
was
cut
rooting
that
for
video
France
off.
because of him.
I cut that video off right where he went on a rant against Jason Tatum.
Right. This guy wouldn't play Jason, whatever. I can't stand him. Of course, not a big fan of any of the speakers we saw last night. It's going to get worse. But speaking of China, let's get to Tim Walz, Tinkerbell Tim, who's going to speak, I think, Wednesday, who's very excited at this convention. As you can see, he's like very, very giddy at the joy in the room. Tinkerbell Tim has a history. He has a love for China that is unmatched. And I'm not sure the mainstream media is going to touch it, but the conservative echo chamber, they will. The thing you have to understand about Tim Walz is the Minneapolis, Minnesota media is as corrupt as any. They are totally in the tank for the guy. They literally have reporters who are fanboys, who have like pictures on their social media of them with Walz, and they love Walz. They're all radicals. They're all fellow travelers, and they have no problem with the fact that Tim Walz, who could be vice president in a few months, has traveled to China 30 times. He was a high school teacher, and he would spend his summers in China. He would bring students to China and profess his love for the system. There's a news organization in Minnesota called Alpha News. They're the ones, I believe, Liz Collins, she's the one that made the Fall of Minneapolis documentary, which everybody should see. It tells you the truth about George Floyd. It exposes the lies told by everybody, the media, the police chief, and of course the governor, Tim Walz, who knows the truth and lied to you about George Floyd while he was cheering on the rioters who burned his city and shooting innocent taxpayers with paintball guns for sitting on their porch. This is from the Washington Free Beacon. Why doesn't the Washington Post cover this? Well, I think you know why. As a high school teacher in the 90s, Tim Walz appeared to extol life under Chinese communism, telling his students that it is a system in which, quote, everybody shares and gets free food and housing. Quote, this is amazing. This is Governor Walz, Tim Walz. It means that everyone is the same and everyone shares, he said in November of 91. The doctor and the construction worker make the same. The Chinese government and the place they work for provide housing and 30 pounds of rice per month. They get food and housing. He thinks that's a good idea, that the doctor makes the same as the construction worker and the government gives him 30 pounds of rice. Michael Sobolik, a Chinese expert, author of a book about China, said Walz's comments to students were, quote, shockingly naive, a description of the Chinese Communist Party's rules. American students need to learn the horrific truths of communism and the horrors this dangerous ideology has wrought. Walz's rosy description of communism is similar to his recent controversial remark that, quote, one person's socialism is another person's neighborliness. A former student of Walz, who went on a trip with him, says he's a flat-out Maoist. And you don't want to know why he loves China? Because they gave him special treatment. They paid for his trips. He admits he's never been treated better than when he was in China. He says in the dorm room, he's the only one that got air conditioning. He had the best dorm room and he had air conditioning. And for that, he extols the virtues of Chinese communism. And worse, this is just stunning. He got married on the anniversary of the Tiananmen Square massacre. His wife said he wanted it to be a memorable day. He honeymooned in China. So he chose his wedding day as he made it the anniversary of Tiananmen Square, which somewhere between 1,000 and 3,000 people were slaughtered by the government. He wanted it to be his special day. And then he went on a honeymoon to this hellhole. and in the 90s, and he was in the National Guard. So he was in the U.S. military, and any chance he got, he went. Do you know anyone who's gone anywhere 30 times? So he has a choice. He's on summer break. He could go anywhere. He could go to Europe. He could go to the Caribbean. I mean, he could go on an Alaska cruise. He chooses every year to go to China because he loves China. And he's spoken out. He says he doesn't consider China an adversary. There is Tiananmen Square. Read about it. It's incredible. He doesn't. He not only does he not have a problem with the Chinese government slaughtering students for protesting, for demanding reform, he celebrates it. He got married on that day and then went there in the 90s. I know James Comer, the Oversight Committee, the Kentucky congressman, has said he's looking into this. Where's the FBI? Why aren't they looking into this? Where's the Kamala Harris campaign? Didn't they know this before they chose this guy? This is frightening. This guy is trouble. This guy is a bad, bad guy. We know he's a left-wing lunatic, and we know he believes in government control over your lives. We know he's a fanatical trans supporter, but he's also a devoted Maoist, according to one of his former students, a guy who went to China with him. I'll get you that. Yeah, the guy uses his first name, not his last name, and his first name is Shad. I'm not sure that's quite the cover you were looking for, Shad. But he talks about hanging out with Walz in China and how enamored Walz was. Shad says, there's no doubt Walz was a true believer. I've been telling this to people for 30 years. Nobody wants to listen. At night, we'd go out, walk the streets. We'd buy souvenirs. Tim was always buying the Little Red Book. He said he gave them as gifts. He bought at least a dozen of them while we were on a trip. It would be like in Germany and buying copies of Mein Kampf, the student says of Walz. If there was any doubt what I'm saying, just look at his policies enacted, like the worst abortion law, anti-free speech, the riots. He's a Maoist to the core and should not be underestimated. That's a student who knows him, who went there with him and hung out with him for weeks in China, calling him a Maoist to the core. This could be your vice president in 5 months. I don't know how that is not alarming to any and every decent American taxpayer. Just remarkable. This guy is bad news, and I don't think we know half of it. Hopefully, there'll be people like Alpha News who will keep digging. But all right, we're going to get to the debate. These debates are going to be wild. Kamala Harris versus Donald Trump. I'm not totally confident. Kamala Harris, obviously, she can speak. She looks good, I guess. And Trump, I don't trust him. He's going to get crazy. He's going to get personal. I have the utmost faith in J.D. Vance.
Yeah.
Taking on Tinkerbell Tim, but Trump versus Kamala. I'm a little nervous, but I'm looking forward to it. And I guess it's a good sign, but Kamala is running scared. We'll get to that and more. But first.
Excuse me.
Donald Trump announced last night that Kamala has turned down the Fox News debate that Trump agreed to. She will not agree to a debate on Fox. There's Trump's announcement on Truth Social. He writes, Comrade Kamala Harris just informed us that she will not do the Fox News debate on September 4th. I am not surprised by this development because I feel she knows it is very difficult at best for her to defend her record-setting flip-flopping on absolutely everything she once believed in, including her statements that there would be no fracking in Pennsylvania and her horrible performance on the border. The former president wrote, this is interesting for a couple of reasons. I mean, obviously she's hiding. Obviously she's afraid to speak, answer questions. We saw what happens when she goes and actually actually announces, what her policies are, where she stands. She's a socialist. She wants price controls. She's stolen some of Trump's ideas, Vance's ideas, but her own ideas are radical, and everybody knows it. She has agreed to another debate on ABC. You want to know why? This is from the New York Times. The debate, I believe September 10th on ABC. Dana Walden, a senior executive whose portfolio includes ABC News, is one of Kamala Harris's, quote, extraordinary friends, according to the New York Times. Walden and Harris have known each other since 1994. Walden has donated to dozens of Democrats and contributed to Harris's political campaigns since at least 2003. That's 21 years this woman's been giving her money. She donated to her campaigns for Attorney General, the U.S. Senate. Harris has even credited Dana Walden and her husband for her marriage at a fundraiser because her husband, Dougie, was friends with Walden's husband. They're tight. They're thick as thieves. This is an ABC executive. Okay, does anyone doubt that Kamala Harris will have the questions in advance? The debate on September 10th will be moderated by ABC anchors David Muir and Lindsay Davis. Lindsay Davis is a Democrat operative with a press pass. This is a Kamala fan. This debate will be rigged. I have no doubt. And that's why Kamala Harris has agreed to it. And that's why she's afraid to debate on Fox. And again, this just the vice presidential debate is going to be moderated by two Democrats also. It's too bad we can't have honest, fair, open debates, but we can't. The only way Kamala Harris is going to go toe-to-toe with Donald Trump is if she knows one of her fans, one of her supporters is moderating, and I assume she gets the questions in advance. All right, let's get to Costner. This story is just incredible. You ever see anyone unruly on a plane? I mean, you see it all the time. People, arguing over their seats, and that's my seat. Or people, the worst people are the ones who try to put like a steamer trunk in the overhead baggage compartment, and the line has to wait. Everyone has to wait because they don't want to check their bag. And then they argue with the flight attendant, and it just gets tense. It happens. It's a tense situation when you fly. I'm pretty sure this is the worst behavior by a passenger, at least since Richard Reed tried to light his shoes on fire and blow up the plane. He didn't go that far, but Gosner Cherylus, former NFL player, former Boston College star, on a flight to Ireland. He was heading to Dublin from Boston, from Logan to Dublin. I'll just read you this from the Blaze. A former NFL player is accused of urinating on an elderly woman during a flight from Boston to Dublin, as well as hitting another elderly passenger. A police report said the 40-year-old Gosner Cherylus appeared intoxicated when he arrived at Logan Airport Saturday evening for a Delta Airlines flight. Cherylus argued with another passenger over seating arrangements, and about an hour into the flight, he walked over to an elderly female passenger and, quote, emptied his bladder for 20 seconds. He took a leak on an elderly woman on the plane in flight. He then got unruly and aggressive when flight attendants tried to subdue him, and he struck another elderly man with his hand, according to the police report. Passengers and crew feared for their safety. Cherylus is 6'6" and weighs 280 pounds. The incident forced the plane to turn around and return to Boston. So all these people were heading to Ireland on vacation, going golfing, sightseeing, and they had to go back to Boston because this lunatic emptied his bladder on an old lady. And of course, he blamed it on sleeping medication. In a statement after he was booked and released on $2,500 bail, he wrote, the flight was unexpectedly delayed for 4 hours, and it did not take off until 12:30 a.m. In preparation for the overnight flight, I took a sleeping medication that I don't normally use, which resulted in behavior that is not representative of my character. I'd like to apologize to all passengers and crew. Now, I understand people have a few drinks, couple beers, take a Advil PM. Does that result in you emptying your bladder on an old woman on the plane? This is insane, and I think he's in trouble. I think he's in big trouble. He's going to have to, go to jail, at least for, I don't know, a weekend or something. This is so nuts.
I have a sneaking suspicion I was not Advil PM. It was probably
no, I don't think so.
or something.
I have a friend from California. She takes long flights all the time, and she says the only way she can do it is an edible. I'm going to guess Shirless overdid it with the edibles and mixed it with some kind of alcoholic drink in the airport as they waited 4 hours. I'm going to guess Cord Gosner Chairless got overserved on this flight to Ireland. But that's not something you live down too quickly, emptying your bladder on an old lady. And the poor flight attendants, the guy's massive. He's an NFL offensive lineman, and they have to subdue him until they return to Boston and arrest him. Wow. That's about as bad as it gets. But
I like the idea of the U.S. Marshals that are always on the flights that never have to do anything. This one guy,
right.
That's him.
You just sit there and watch movies. Tough job. But I assume you're right. They had to subdue him. It doesn't say whether they had to handcuff him or tie him down. But that's not easy, man. When a guy is this out of his mind, drunk or stoned or whatever he was, but. That is pretty bad, but all right, we will leave it there for today. Day 2 tonight for the convention, Democrat convention. I think the mobs, the Hamas supporters, the climate change nuts, I think they're just getting warmed up. I think it's going to get crazier as the day goes on. Already, they're knocking down barriers and fighting with cops, and it's going to get worse. Looking forward to watching that and all the speeches and the celebrations of joy. And James Taylor, I assume we'll get a chance to sing. That's really projects virility and youth and energy and joy, James Taylor. But we will be watching, and we'll leave it there for today. Thanks for listening. Thanks, Ironhead. I'm Jerry.